The Nashville Predators find themselves in a 3-1 hole in their Stanley Cup playoff series, and the last loss was not without a little controversy. And Kimmel of Locked On Predators joins us to discuss that and how the Preds could get back into the series. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Predators, Ann Kimmel, and Ann, a tough loss for the Preds on Sunday. Looked like they had the game in their hands. What happened?
The Nashville Predators had this game in hand with about 57 and a half minutes, played in this game. And then the Vancouver Canucks went 6-on-5 and Brock Boeser happened. You need your big players to come up big, especially in the playoffs. And that's exactly what Vancouver got from Brock Boeser, who tied the game up. And then Vancouver came out, won the game in overtime. And this was a game that Nashville had a lead 3-1. In this game, they really outplayed Vancouver for 57 and a half minutes, but that doesn't win a hockey game. So the Predators find themselves down 3-1 in this series, and it's going to be a challenge to get back into it.
No question about that. I mean, what was the team doing so well for that first 57 and a half minutes of the game? Because, what I saw, they looked pretty good.
It's been a really interesting series between these two teams. And this game, I think, was the most open that you've seen this series be. And Nashville really had more puck possession, I think, generated obviously more shots on goal than Vancouver did. And I think a lot of that had to do with just winning the small puck battles. And that was something that had been an emphasis as they got through games 2, games 3, like, look, we have to win these puck battles. And I feel like that's something that Nashville did very well. They had some extended offensive zone time, which is something that they didn't always have in this series in a couple of these games. So they really had this game pretty well under control. They were able to limit chances for players like JT Miller. Brock Boeser did get on the score sheet early for the Vancouver Canucks, but really they had done such a great job to limit chances. UC Saros was playing really well in goal. And Andrew Burnett in the postgame just said, we had a couple of minutes where we had some defensive breakdowns in front of UC Saros, and we lost a little bit of our composure. And that's all it takes in playoff hockey to let a team in.
Little bit of controversy in this game. Talk to me about what happened and your take on it.
Yeah, so there was some question when the Nashville Predators got a goal. Philip Forsberg scored. It was one of those goals that went off the skate, and the officials ruled it a good goal and then went immediately to take a look at it. And I think Vancouver wanted to take a look at it too. I don't believe Vancouver could have challenged it anyway. There was some controversy about, was there a kicking motion? Was there not? If you look at it from a lot of angles, you would say, no, there was certainly not a kicking motion. There was one replay that we were able to see in arena that looked like maybe there was some, but it was a situation where Vancouver couldn't challenge. The officials felt like there wasn't enough to overturn the goal, and play moved on. But yeah, there was some question about that goal.
So the goal counts. We move on. I guess the big question from a Predator standpoint, emotionally, how do you overcome a very difficult loss like this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Roman Josi in the locker room in post game was very upfront and said, you know what, this sucks. Gus Nyquist, this sucks. I mean, these are veterans who have seen it. They've been through it. been through it. And this was a tough one for the Nashville Predators, but they understand where they're at. And when you are in a playoff series, when you were down now in a playoff series 3-1, you just cannot stay there. And Nashville liked most of their game. They really felt like they had played their best game in this series. They liked what they were doing. They were having a lot of success. Asked Andrew Brunette about some of the younger players. Remember, Nashville's got some players that are just getting postseason experience, and what was his concern level about them kind of being able to turn the page as quickly as you need to. Brunette really felt like, look, these young players are just so hungry to get back out there. They almost have an easier time than the veterans who have gone through it before. Nashville is going to have a challenge, just sort of emotionally resetting. They're going to be on the plane, flying to Vancouver tomorrow, and they've got to get right back on the ice, and they've got to win. So this is going to be a real challenge of the maturity of this team and how much growth mentally that they have had over the course of the season. It's going to be tested right now.
It's also going to test the coaching staff. What do you think their approach is going to be?
Andrew Brunette really liked most of what he saw from the team. There were a couple of late defensive breakdowns in front of UC Saros. That's something that they will address. They did have to make some adjustments defensively. Spencer Stastny was not in the game due to an injury. Dante Fabro came in. That was his first game in quite a while. Roman Josi was out of this game for a chunk of time. He had an injury, had to get stitches to his ear. I think that Andrew Brunette will kind of look at those defensive pairings, make sure that he still likes that. That may be an area to kind of keep an eye on, but I don't know that they're going to change a lot about the game. They really liked how they played. They hated how it finished.
Talk to me about UC Saros and what he's meant to this team, both in this series and really all year round.
It's been such an interesting season for UC Saros. This is a Vezina caliber goaltender, but this has been statistically his worst season. He's really had a lot of ups and downs, but when UC Saros is good, he is very good. And he has been very reliable for the Nashville Predators in this series. And Andrew Brunette was very quick to speak up and say those two late goals were not on Saros. We have hung him out to dry defensively in those two late goals. So I think full confidence in UC Saros. I think Saros is going to be really important as this series wraps up because, again, you're facing really great offensive players like JT Miller, like Brock Besser. You've also got Quinn Hughes. So Saros really is going to be important.
All right. So what has to happen for the Nashville Predators to get back into this series, or at least bring it back? Let's start with baby steps. Bring it back to Nashville for Game 6.
I think it comes down to your best players have to be your best players. Yes, Philip Forsberg and Gus Nyquist got goals tonight, but that's the first we've really heard of Nyquist, O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, and Roman Josi. Vancouver has done a fantastic job of really shutting down Nashville's best players. Those are the guys you need to have step up in this next game if they want to bring this series back to Nashville. You've got to get Philip Forsberg, Gus Nyquist, Ryan O'Reilly, and Roman Josi on the score sheet.
How about the depth scoring? Because I know that's been an issue all season long.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to watch the depth battles in this series. Vancouver has a lot of talented depth players, and a lot of people felt like that's where Nashville was going to be most outmatched. But I think Nashville has felt pretty good about some of their depth players. Mark Jankowski, Luke Evangelista have all scored. I think that they've done a good job, especially in Sunday night's game. They did a really good job handling the pressure from Vancouver's depth. But they are going to need a little bit more of that. Some players like Tommy Novak, he's been very quiet in this series, and you need all of the players contributing, especially now. I mean, this is it. These are the games you absolutely have to win.
Yeah, win or go home now for the Nashville Predators. And why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
So you can find the podcast on your favorite audio podcasting platform. Just look for Locked On Predators. You can find us on YouTube under that same name. And of course, you can check out the podcast on social media at LO_Predators.
All right. And thanks so much and good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks so much.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure your team can pull out a win, but that's when you dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball and charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb that leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free in the App Store or Google Play.